I'm worried about education. My name is Peter Vardy, and for nearly 30 years I was a philosopher at the University of London, and for some of those years Vice Principal of the University of London College. In the last 15 years I must have spoken to about 100,000 young people in schools. I know schools very well across Australia and also in my own country, the UK. And I think education has lost its way. Let me try and explain why. About 30 years ago, many universities had departments of philosophy of education. These were academics concerned with the nature of education. What should education be about? What should be the priorities in schools and universities? Almost all those have now been closed down, and decisions about education are taken by politicians, often responding to what they perceive as the need of parents and the electorate, with very little real training, and certainly with no thought of the philosophy behind education. And I think the result is catastrophic. I think it's been really bad for our young people, I think it's really bad for our countries, and I think it has major long-term consequences. And yet, parents tend to have bought into it because it is the accepted wisdom. More and more, schools are preoccupied with academic results. Academic results and measurement matter more than anything else. And partially it's financially driven. Governments put a lot of money into schools, parents put money into independent schools, and they want to see results. They want to have measurement, and measurement can be best achieved in terms of academic results. How good is School A compared to School B in terms of the academic results they achieve? And don't get me wrong, academic results matter a great deal. They're going to control what university a child can go to, what courses they can have access to, and probably their future career. So academic results certainly matter. But instead of being something that matters, but is part of an overall and broader view of education, it's become almost the only thing that matters. Politicians have become preoccupied with stem cell subjects, science, technology, engineering, maths, and they measure us against countries like Singapore, which ranked right at the top of international rankings in terms of science, maths and English, China, South Korea. But in those countries, young people are pushed incredibly hard. The whole focus on parents is passing exams, doing well in exams, because that's the key to a successful life. The result is a distorted childhood. Very little time to play, very little time to enjoy themselves. And schools have bought into this. Parents are aware of the importance of academic results, so they often choose schools on the basis of which schools perform best. Governors pressurise heads to focus on academic results. Heads pressurise heads of department pressurise teachers. Teachers are increasingly valued entirely on the basis of their academic results. They're measured as to what value added they achieve, what increase against expectations they achieve in their children. And therefore they push their children. They don't just push them, they spoon feed them to get them through exams. And the whole focus is on success and academic results. In some schools in my own country, the UK, a small minority admittedly, they will actually exclude people from certain exams and pass them on to another school so as to maintain their results. It's part of this general culture that results are what matters. One of the most influential philosophers in the 19th century was John Stuart Mill. He was a utilitarian. And broadly speaking, utilitarianism maintains that the aim of life is to be happy, and the more we can maximise happiness and minimise pain, the better. Sounds plausible. John Stuart Mill was quite brilliant. His father was James Mill, and the godfather was somebody called Jeremy Bentham, who was the founder of modern utilitarianism. And John Stuart Mill's father brought him up on the basis that what mattered was facts, what mattered was academic results. Now, he had a very bright child, but he was pushed incredibly hard. Between the age of about 3 and 11, he was really reading serious books like David Hume. He was doing Latin at 8 or 9, and by 12 and 13, he was doing theoretical chemistry. The whole focus of the education was on academic results, on pushing him as far as possible. He was offered a place at Oxford University at an incredibly young age, but his father didn't think it would push him hard enough. And the result of this emphasis on results was a distorted childhood. He had very little time to play, no time for music, no time for the emotions. And the result was he had an almost complete nervous breakdown. And he went to the poetry of Wordsworth and Coleridge, and he realised that his father's whole approach to education was mistaken. There was more to life than academic results. And this led him to a very rich understanding of what it meant to be human. He was a utilitarian. He wrote the classic text on utilitarianism. But he basically argues that if anybody seeks their own happiness, they won't find it. And he argued for a religion of humanity based on altruism, based on devoting oneself to the good of other human beings, a much broader view. And actually this goes back to Aristotle. It goes back to the idea of potential. Aristotle started as 2,300 years ago on the route to modern Western science. He examined trees, he examined fish, he examined fetuses and animals to understand how they worked, to understand their nature and particularly their potential. All the potential to be an adult frog is in the frog spawn. All the potential to be a magnificent oak tree is in the acorn. And he asked, what is it to fulfill human potential? Now that is an important question today. What is it to fulfill human potential? What do we want of our young people? Is it to fulfill human potential to be academically successful, to get a good job, to have a nice house and a nice car, and nice children, and to be reasonably wealthy? Is that the fulfillment of human potential? There is no serious philosopher who thinks that's the case. And John Stuart Mill recognised it. Dickens wrote a book called Hard Times, dealing with exactly this problem. And in that book there was a character called Mr. Gradgrind, who ran a little school in the industrial north of England. And his whole focus was on facts-based education. We bought into this, and I'm afraid it's an impoverishment of education. And we're all guilty. I think parents are guilty, I think schools are guilty, and I think governments are guilty as well. I think we need to go back to the basics and ask, what exactly are we educating for? And I think Aristotle was right. I think it is about fulfilling human potential. But the question, of course, is what is that potential? What does it mean? I think it's largely focused on what it means to be a good human being. I think that's what most parents are concerned about. They're not primarily interested in what academic scores they're getting, the child is getting. They're interested in how is Jack or Jean turning out? What sort of person is she being? And that's actually equally important to academic results. I'm not downplaying the importance of academic results, but it's a matter of balance. I know one head in the UK, very good independent school, when parents come along to look at the school and they're looking around the school and there are questions about academic results, the head says, if that is the main reason you're coming here, go somewhere else. Because what we want is well-rounded people. Yes, good academically, but they're good at sport, they're good at music, a well-rounded education. And that includes the arts, it includes the emotions, and I think it should include religious studies and philosophy. Why? Even if you're an atheist trying to understand the great questions of life, why are we here? What is life about? What is the purpose of our existence? Those are fundamental questions, and religious education and philosophy address those questions. Britain used to be one of the leaders in the world in this field, but sadly in recent years religious education is becoming increasingly marginalised, and I think it's a tragedy. In Australia in 1872, Victoria took a decision that its state education system should be secular, compulsory and free. I can understand why. They wanted to avoid indoctrination. But the result is, I think, in Australia, an impoverishment of education. And you don't have philosophy or religious studies, at least not at any wide scale, in Australia schools. There are obviously some boards that do, but not very many take the subjects. We've got an increase in artificial intelligence. We're all aware of what's happening. Within 20 years, there'll be no truck drivers, bus drivers, train drivers, possibly no pilots. They'll all be taken over by AI. We've already got driverless cars in some parts of the world. But it's going to go much further than that. Japan's already got 5 hotels run entirely by AI, no human beings involved at all. Japan's already got robot nurses that can look after old people. They can clean them, they can talk to them, they can play chess with them, they can entertain them. And they're now experimenting with doing the same with young children. There's more and more pressure on young families to have both parents working, and it's very difficult to take time off to care for children. The ideal answer is to have an AI, a robot who is friendly, who can play with them, who can entertain them and maybe teach them as well. But in going down this route, we've got a dehumanising process starting. There are already discussions as to what we're going to do in a world where there is very little work. There are some countries already considering a minimum basic income because there won't be many jobs. Apart from the question where the money is going to come to find this, there are questions of meaning. Once you don't have work, what is going to be the meaning and purpose of life? So I think we need to start getting back to the questions asked by philosophers of education. What is the aim and purpose of education? But underlying those are questions about what it means to be human. And I'd like to read you a short letter written by a head about 50 years ago now. He'd been through the Holocaust, and he wrote the following letter to his staff. Dear teacher, I'm a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no person should witness. gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot and burned by high school and college graduates. I am suspicious of education. My request is help your students to become more human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. I think he's exactly right. And to be honest, I think most teachers would think he's right as well. The trouble is, teachers are no longer valued for who they are as human beings. They're valued in terms of their utility in achieving academic results. And I fear in some cases, our children are valued on the same basis. So I am not, third time I've said it, undermining the importance of academic results, but I think there is a broader approach to education that needs to be recaptured. We need to ask, what is the purpose of education? What do we want of our children? And I think that question, what does it mean to live a fulfilled life? What are we doing here? How are we going to live, and eventually how are we going to die? Those are the most important questions of all. And they're questions asked in the arts, in English, in music in a way, and also in philosophy and religious education, which is why I think these subjects matter so much in the modern world.